If you want to retire, but feeling confused or unsure where to start, this video is for you. I've had the opportunity to help over 1,000 families retire successfully. While they each had their differences, they all shared key elements which can be applied to help your situation. I'm Nick Morrison and founder of Morrison Wealth Advisors, a financial planning firm focused on helping retirement savers 50 and over create tax-efficient, successful retirement plans. Today, I'm going to show our exact 7-step framework to help organize these decisions in a way that's effective and helps you cut through the noise. The first step is outlining your vision for retirement. How are you going to be spending your time? Who are you going to be spending your time with? Right? Certain activities like a private golf course membership, traveling to Europe are more expensive than spending time with grandkids, spending time at church. Outlining your vision is going to help us with step 2 in the process, calculating your income needs in retirement. I found there's one of two ways to get there. Either you're someone who knows your numbers, either through tracking them in a spreadsheet or perhaps tracking them on a credit card. We're going to take those numbers. So let's say in this example, it's $8,000 a month, and then we're going to adjust them for what we expect to change in retirement. So perhaps your travel budget, your leisure budget is going up, or maybe you have some expenses that are dropping off. Maybe your mortgage is going to be paid. Maybe you no longer are going to have to make tuition payments. So again, in this example, let's say before retirement, it was $8,000 a month, but you expect your retirement budget to be $10,000. So $10,000 is the number we're going to work from. The other way to get there is to back into the number. So that's to say what hits your bank account after taxes, 401k contributions. Maybe you're making some of your own savings to a brokerage account or savings account. Again, let's say we do that math and we're now working for $10,000 a month. Okay, so once you've calculated your income needs, we need to move on to calculate what kind of income you can generate. So we want to start with known sources like Social Security, a pension if you have one, maybe real estate income if you've had a tenant in there for a while. And then we want to do some math to see what you can safely withdraw from your retirement portfolio. So let's say in this example that you and your spouse are able to collect $5,000 a month from Social Security and you need $10,000 a month. So now there's a $5,000 gap. There's two main approaches you can take, a fixed approach or dynamic approach. With a fixed approach, the general rule of thumb is to take 4% of your portfolio in year one and increase that every year to account for inflation. So if you had $1 million in year one, you'd be able to take out 40,000. In year two, you would take out 41,000, regardless of whether your investments had increased or decreased in value. Some are proposing a safer approach at 3.7%. Proponents of 3.7 instead of 4 are suggesting that you should take a little bit less out because people are living longer and interest rates are lower today than they have been historically. The other approach is to take a dynamic withdrawal approach. This might support as much as 5.5, closer to 5.9%, whether you want to plan for a 30-year or 40-year retirement. It also is going to be dictated on how much risk you take with your portfolio. Now, the big appeal of the dynamic approach is that now on $1 million, you could take as much as 55, closer to 59,000 a year. The big catch is you might have to cut back if the market drops enough. So with the fixed rate approach, you're taking less to start, but you're not having to cut back if the market works against you. With the dynamic approach, you're able to take more initially, but you might have to tighten the belt. So in this example, you're getting $5,000 from Social Security. You need $5,000. If you have $1 million portfolio, the fixed approach is likely not going to be enough. So you either have to consider taking a dynamic approach, or is it where you can cut some of those expenses back? Again, if there is a gap between the amount of income you want to spend and the amount of income you think you can generate, that's where there's some decisions that have to be made. Either potentially working longer, cutting spending, taking a different withdrawal approach, possibly working part-time in retirement. Once you've solved for the gap, right, you've got an understanding of how much income you're going to need, how much income you can generate, then it's time to switch into the next step and make some decisions about your investment allocation. So when investing in retirement, you're balancing two priorities. Long-term, you need growth, but we know there's going to be market downturns. It's not a matter of if, it's when, it's how severe. So I would recommend starting with building a cash war chest first. And in my mind, there's two key components to it. First, it's having up to 12 months worth of expenses in a cash equivalent, like a money market fund. So in this example, they have 5,000 of income that's not tied to the market, Social Security. Their gap is 5,000. So 5,000 times 12, you'd want to have 60,000, at least 60,000 in something like a money market fund. Then beyond that, depending on where interest rates are and how relatively attractive these choices are, you could either use money market, you could use high quality bonds, bond funds. You'd want to build out the remainder to 3 to 5 years. 3 being the least conservative, right? The most aggressive, 5 being a little bit more conservative. The thought is if you have up to 5 years worth of expenses in money markets, high quality bonds, you are much better prepared to survive a market downturn, being able to pull from those investments, giving your higher risk growth investments more time to recover, hopefully avoiding any need to sell at a discount. Once you make a decision on how much of a war chest that you want, so let's say in this example, it's 5 years, then you would allocate the rest to growth. Now, some of you might be looking at those numbers and still not feeling comfortable with the risk you can take. You can build more of a buffer in there if you want. You can look at dividend stocks instead of high growth stocks. There's some different ways that you can put your thoughts into the portfolio, but start with that minimum war chest, then allocate to growth. A number of decisions can go into this part of the portfolio, but that's how we recommend clients balance wanting to pursue growth long-term, but building in a way to survive a market downturn. This is extremely critical in the first 5 years of retirement. Not that anybody wants to experience an extreme market downturn, but if that happens early in retirement, studies show that that has a more profound effect than if that happens later in retirement. Next, we think it's beneficial for you to consider tax planning. Now, for retirees, this often again fits into 2 buckets. Decisions that could potentially save you in taxes today, decisions that might be able to save you in the future. Roth conversions, for example, is something that might be able to save you taxes in the future. This most commonly occurs if you're in a lower tax bracket today than you might be in the future. Perhaps you just retired, maybe you're living off of cash. Let's say you're projected to be in the 12% tax bracket, but you've done a healthy amount of 401k and IRA savings, and your required minimum distributions, when they're projected to start, if that were to throw you into the 32% tax bracket, it would make sense to go ahead and pay some of the taxes today at the 12 or even 22% bracket to avoid paying 32% or even higher in the future. The other big avenues that we look at from a tax planning standpoint, especially if you have multiple account types. So let's say you have an IRA, you have a brokerage, you have some cash. We can look at some of the different combinations of pulling from those account types with the hopes of lowering your tax bill. There's situations where I've seen clients have been able to pull money out of the IRA, maybe use up some of their deductions and take it tax-free, or maybe they've been able to realize some capital gains at 0% or maybe 15 instead of a higher rate. So again, if you have multiple account types, you're looking at withdrawing from different combinations in a way that's going to help you save in taxes. It's not always about just saving more taxes today, but you're looking at the bigger picture. How can you pay less taxes over time? This can go a really long way at safeguarding your nest egg, giving you more spending power, more ability to give back charitably. All right, then it's important that we look at insurance. So once you go from your working years where you've saved up enough to live off of your nest egg, we think it's important to review your insurance needs. In many cases, you have less of an insurance need than you did during your working years. The one big exception to that is long-term care planning. Whether or not you're going to need some sort of extensive health care later on retirement is not something we can know today, but it's at least a conversation worth having. So again, review the types of insurance you have, review how much insurance you likely can cut that back. And then again, you want to have a long-term care conversation, whether you're looking at a traditional policy, a hybrid, or some version of self-funding. We think this is an important step once you've thought about your income, your expense needs, your allocation decisions, trying to save in taxes. Okay, and then the last step in this process is reviewing any estate planning needs. So hopefully you've done some really good planning. You know that you've got enough income to meet your lifestyle needs. You've done some tax planning to save where possible. You've made some smart decisions around balancing growth and risk management. You reviewed your insurance needs. So hopefully this is money that's going to last you throughout your retirement. It's important to have your estate documents, where they're at the very basics, things like a will, power of attorney, listed beneficiaries, so that when something happens to you, it can flow to your loved ones or charitable endeavors with as least headache, least friction, least administrative burden, to really reduce that on your loved ones and make sure that that money goes where you want it to.